Alongside Rob Lewis and Brent Hubbs, I'm Austin Price for the Rocky Top Roundtable on this Vanderbilt week. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. And guys, Tennessee, a chance to get to 7 wins coming up on Saturday against Vanderbilt, a Vanderbilt team that's been pretty lifeless all year long, although they did have a little bit more fight against Ole Miss a week ago. But Tennessee seems like that they're very mentally and mature, mentally prepared and mature enough to be able to go into a game where they're supposed to win and handle it much like they did last week.
Well, I think that's the best thing that Tennessee did last week, Rob, in terms of the encouragement. I think you could hear that in Josh Heupel's voice. After the game, we said, I learned a lot about my team. They were ready to go against a team that they should have beaten handily.
Yeah, that was probably my biggest takeaway from a game, that Tennessee was going to win no matter what happened. They were self-starters. And Coach Heupel talked a lot last week about this is one of those where you have to bring your own juice. There weren't a lot of people in the stands. You know, they had played 3 top 10 opponents in their last 4 games. This wasn't one of those games. It was one where Tennessee was going to win, and they showed up and they were ready to roll from the beginning.
Yeah, let's talk about the offense first. Hendon Hooker, super efficient. Cedric Tillman continues his stretch of touchdowns and 100-yard games, and this is a Tennessee team that offensively just gets off to a quick start through the run game, and then again efficiency in the pass game.
Hendon Hooker, I mean, again, not a great team, not an SEC defense. I mean, it's tough to beat 17-20 for 273 yards and 2 touchdowns.
And 1 on the ground, too.
I mean, I thought he was really good Saturday night.
The thing about this team that I think fans enjoy, as a media person, I think you enjoy covering it, is there is no feeling out process in the first quarter. There's no kind of see what the defense is going to do. It is hammer down, foot on the gas. This is what we do. You guys figure out how to defend us.
There's no settling into the game.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no establishing this. This is what we do. You figure out how to stop us because we're coming. And I think as a fan base, you've got to appreciate that fact, considering where you've been offensively the last few years.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, like, do they do do they throw some different wrinkles in each week? Yes, but don't make the mistake of misunderstanding. It's not the wing T, but it's like a high school team that runs the wing T. They do what they do. The tempo, the pace of play, how they call the offense, they do what they do.
Well, you talking about wrinkles? I mean, they do what they do, but they switch it up. However, I don't remember the stats exactly. Tight ends. What were the tight end numbers this week?
Oh, the tight ends total had 10 catches if you count Hunter Salmon in there. But I mean, I think they had 8 catches between Jacob Warren and Princeton Fant. And look, they didn't have Javonte Payton. Okay, here's how we adjust to it. We'll get the ball to tight end. We didn't target them in the month of October, essentially, and we go back to them and target the tight ends, figure out how to stop it. And again, I think that's what you're talking about, Rob and Austin, is they dictate to the defense. And I think from a fan base, they really enjoy seeing offensive football that way.
Yeah, and Jacob Warren and Princeton Fant, the tight ends, have established themselves over the course of the year. But they've also kind of been like a nice safety valve for Hendon Hooker, or a safety valve for the offense. When they don't have one of their big guns at receiver, they can make them a bigger part of the offense, and they don't miss a beat.
Alex Golesh done a nice job with that group, with those 2 kids. He really has. He's created them to be legitimate weapons.
Well, yeah, not just those kids, but the receivers as a whole. I mean, you look at the numbers last year from Velus Jones and Cedric Tillman, and they were minuscule. I mean, Cedric Tillman had 124 yards receiving in 3 years. Velus Jones had 224 yards receiving last year.
Most of it against Vanderbilt.
Over 100 of it against Vanderbilt. And this year, I mean, Cedric Tillman, before this week, was 8th in the SEC in receiving yards per game. Velus Jones has 40-something catches for over 500 yards. I mean, what they have gotten out of veterans who have just been guys. I mean, nothing remotely special this year, to me, is remarkable when you talk about perimeter skill position players.
The biggest takeaway from the whole season for me is this staff's not been too proud to make a move on a mistake they made, whether it be quarterback position, whether it be how they were going to play the wide receivers and how they moved around Bayless and so on and so forth. Like they've not kind of got caught in, we're going to bang our head against the wall while we try to fit the round peg into the square hole. Okay, this isn't working. Let's shift and adjust.
Yeah, I think offensively, lots of flexibility. They show lots of flexibility. And then on the defensive side of the ball, I think that unit's been about establishing your identity and who you are.
Which is a lot of tackles for loss.
Well, it is. But I'm telling you, I look at like Rodney Garner, Rob, and I mean, Elijah Simmons apparently didn't have a good week last week. You just don't play. You're just not going to play. And so there's a real establishment of it's going to be my way or we're not going to do it there from an effort standpoint, and it shows.
Aubrey Sullivan, Tennessee Tech, have we seen him since then?
No.
Witness protection program.
Yeah.
I mean, Rodney Garner he's an assassin.
Yeah, but then you get Roman Harrison with 11 tackles the last 2 weeks.
And hard tackles.
You know, and all of a sudden his snaps are going up. I mean, there is a very clear, you're going to do it my way Monday through Friday, and if you do, you'll play. And if you don't, you can sit and watch. And I'm totally comfortable with that.
And we'll play Matthew Butler 80 snaps.
Yeah, all right. We'll just leave him out there the whole game. It's fine. I mean, but I think that for that group, that unit, that's what he had to do to establish kind of what they were doing. And that's just kind of the way they played on defense.
If you've ever been around Rodney, he moves so slow. So the word assassin, we'll call him the slow ninja. How about that? We'll nickname him the slow ninja.
He is not afraid of confrontation.
No, you're right about that.
He is not. And again, that group, that unit got back to themselves. I know it wasn't an SEC game. They've been beat up against some really good offenses and some really, good physical teams. They got back to their identity, Rob, against South Alabama with the tackles for loss, playing in the opponent's backfield, which was kind of getting back to sort of get their mojo back a little bit.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we've all written and talked about it. Against Alabama and Georgia, they're not ready for that. But scheme-wise, effort-wise, everybody else on the schedule, I think that front seven has really accounted well for themselves.
Why do you think they've had the success in tackles for loss they've had?
I just think it's style of play. I just think they've said we're going to play on
that Heupel talks about,
and we're going to play on edges. You look at Omari Thomas, the first tackle for loss he had.
There it is.
He's just slanting.
Right on cue, like we planned it.
He's not locked up and engaged in gap control. He's just shooting a gap and making a play. And I think that they've played kind of on angles more than they have just kind of straight up, physically holding gaps. Now they get gashed every now and then when that happens, but the result of that is a lot of guys in the backfield and a lot of guys around the football. And they're playing with really, really good effort all the way through the defense.
No, I agree. I will continue to beat the drum of, Tennessee's, everyone wants to talk about, when they go get the next commit and the importance and all that. I think the importance of, keeping guys like Alontae Taylor, Jerome Carvin, Hendon Hooker, Cedric Tillman around for another year is paramount to keep the upward arc.
Well, I think super seniors are the biggest stat. I mean, I think that's the biggest thing to watch.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, if you bring back Hooker, Tillman, under the radar, but K-Ron Calvert, like the defensive guys you just talked about, AP, huge difference for this team next year.
Yeah, it certainly sets up where you're not as fearful of a drop-off. Now, you're going to go win 10 games. I don't think anybody's saying that. But you can certainly be what you are now and better in year two if you can bring enough of those veteran guys back.
Yeah, I don't think there's any doubt about that. It's Tennessee and Vanderbilt coming up at 3:45. Remember that odd start time, 3:45. It's senior day over at Neyland Stadium. For Rob Lewis and Brent Hubbs, I'm Austin Price.